President Trump has greenlit a deal for Japan's Nippon Steel to buy U.S. steel, a move that reverses his campaign position, rejecting the transaction. The deal comes one day after the U.S. Steelworkers Union urged Trump to block the bid.
President Trump writes of the deal on Truth Social, "For many years, the name United States Steel was synonymous with greatness, and now it will be again." He also said the deal will create at least 70,000 jobs and add $14 billion to the U.S. economy. Now, as a reminder, former President Joe Biden blocked that transaction just weeks before leaving office in January.
U.S. Steel also put out a statement on the news, writing, quote, "U.S. Steel greatly appreciates President Trump's leadership and personal attention to the futures of thousands of steel workers and our iconic company." Others on social media were not as enthusiastic about the news. Former Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown says the deal is, quote, "a betrayal of American workers." So both Biden and Trump initially opposed this deal, and
As
so
did
now
Kamala
Trump,
Harris and J.D. Vance.
right? Everyone did, and so now Trump is doing a 180. That seems like a flip-flop, no?
Well, he did a 180 to the position I think is correct, so I'm glad he did it. I support this. I think it's a no-brainer. I'm actually I'm resentful. And what business is it of the federal government if one private company sells or makes some business arrangement with another private company? This is not a national security issue. If it was a Chinese company or something like that, this is a Japanese company. Japan is an ally of ours, so you can't come up with some convoluted national security reason not to do it. This will add jobs. It will add value to our economy. It is not the business of the government to get into the minutia of what company does what, absent some national security rationale. Joe Biden was absolutely wrong to block it. Trump was wrong to say he didn't want to block it. I'm glad, but he's a deal maker. He knows this is a great deal for the U.S. economy, for creating jobs. It's a no-brainer. It's great. It will make everybody better off. I'm glad he switched his mind on this. And it shows the limitations, I would say, of I know workers and unions are increasingly part of the Republican coalition, and it is important for them to feel like they're getting something out of Republican policy now, which has traditionally not been super worker-friendly. But we cannot just halt all economic progress in this country to appease a special interest, a labor union. This will create jobs. I mean, some unions have interest not in creating jobs and protecting their own jobs, right? They don't want more jobs in this industry because there's more demand for them if they don't have to face competition. Competition is not always good for individual workers and individual firms, but it is good overall for the health of our economy and, most importantly, for making prices come down. We're all so concerned about inflation. Steel is what you use to build all sorts of things. To build houses, we need steel. So we need steel to be inexpensive and readily available so we can have a great nation once again, economically and a lot of other senses. So this has to take place. It's good. Good done.
I don't know if it has to take place. I think if you're talking about special interests of American people, and then you're talking about foreign influence of Japan buying a U.S. company, then what do we prioritize, right?
It's a Japanese firm.
I know, but it doesn't matter. What do we prioritize? If Trump is so America first and American employees are telling him this is not what we want, who actually are going to be the ones that are going to be benefited from the raise and all the investment that they have promised, not on paper, verbally to Trump that they're going to do as a Japanese company, we'll see where it lands. This all could just be talk. I mean, leaders promise things all the time that don't come to fruition. But also, I think, the president of the United Steelworkers said it bluntly, and I think that everybody should understand. He said, Nippon has a long and proven track record of violating U.S. trade laws. That's why he doesn't want this. The deal would end or erode domestic steelmaking capacity and jeopardize thousands of good union jobs, right? Unions are there to protect American workers. So I wouldn't call them special interests. I would more call them looking at the entire deal, people who've been working in this for years and saying this doesn't work for us. So perhaps instead of just making a decision because some country is promising you something and you're mixing in your tariff conversations with this and trying to get a win, maybe talk to the people that it affects most and make sure that they want it, since you are the president of quote unquote America first.
I mean, this is going to come down to a very fundamental political difference between you and I, or between right and left. I don't think government policy or economic policy exists to serve just the interests of a specific subset of the labor market. I certainly don't think the government should go out of their way to harm people in this way. And I know that, again, national security conversations need to take place, particularly with respect to China. But the bottom line is, we can't just build everything in America, even if that would be good for some small number of the labor pool. It'd be more economic opportunity for them. If they can derive that naturally, that's fine. But the government can't restructure deliberately the economy to do that, because it'd be wildly inefficient, make everything more expensive, and then it's an interconnected economy. We're not all just laborers in one specific sector. And so you can't just consider the interests of those people, because then you would harm everyone else.
Well,
We
that's
all
exactly
need
what
things
Trump
to
is doing with his tariff policy, right? He's considering that everything needs to come back to America.
Yeah, the tariff policy is bad. I
Exactly.
agree.
You've said that, so then you should agree that this would also not be that great, right?
No, this is exactly the opposite. The tariff policy is trying to stop people from doing, or individual firms in different countries from doing mutually beneficial economic arrangements. The tariffs get in the way of that. This is the opposite of that. This is saying, okay, do what you want, because that will be economically beneficial.
Well, that's what I'm
to
saying.
people
It
in
directly
Japan and
contradicts
the
the same policy. So the same.
Well, it's
president,
contradictory on Trump's part, yes.
Exactly.
It's contradictory
and
in
it's
the good
fascinating
way.
that we're trying to cut places off like China, which I know is totally different. Japan is an ally, but the way that we're treating foreign influence is just overall, even our allies in Canada with the tariffs, we are doing the exact opposite on one hand, and then just making the steel workers catch the brunt of a decision on the other hand. And people just want to know the details. They're murky at best. No one has any information, and steel workers deserve the right to know exactly what was agreed upon behind closed doors, since this affects them. It's not a special interest, it's American workers.
Yes,
and they should have transparency.
It affects us all, because steel is what builds bridges and homes and everything. And if you make it more expensive, everything in our lives will get more expensive. The
And
government
people are
can't
getting
build
pennies to
anything.
build things in America because the union no longer feel that they have power.
No, unions
And
get in the
because
way of us building
Nippon-
things, which is why we can't build anything in this country. That's what this whole abundance agenda is about. Remember how quickly we built the Hoover Dam and all those public works projects? Because we didn't have regulations and unions and all those things getting in the way and stopping progress.
And you remember why they were created? Because workers were being taken advantage of, paid too low, unlivable wages, right? These are reasons that they're created. So we can argue the good and the bad of things, but we need to make sure that workers are protected, right? Because this is a quote unquote America first, according to President Trump. So he just needs to be consistent. You ask for that in Democrats, you ask for that in everybody. Trump deserves to be consistent and transparent here. Like he says, I'm always accessible to the press. I always keep clear what I'm doing. This was unclear and just a decision that they felt made in spite of them as opposed to alongside them.
I see it why I have some affection for our president, because when push comes to shove, he makes the right call,
He flip-flops.
as he did in this case.
Up next, President Trump is demanding the names and countries of international students at Harvard. But will he get them? We'll discuss.